It is during these transitions is where you find that sometimes your lesson gets derailed and the students, they start to go crazy.
Oh, crazy!
And so I want to give you some tips and tricks, some things maybe I do and some things for you to consider to hopefully make this transition as smooth as possible. But first, let's go ahead and play that intro. So a transition is where you go from one activity to another activity or from one setting to another setting. And so we're going to kind of go through some different transitions you should really consider. And I'll tell you what I do in them to hopefully help you out. And so the first transition you want to think of is from students coming from passing period into your class. I mean, makes sense. That's a good transition, right? Here's what you want to do with that. You want to make sure you're on top of that behavior the moment they walk in. If you let students walk in all crazy like, it's going to make your classroom crazy. And so you want to be on it. Now, what that means to you is different than what it means to me, right? Some people want dead silence walking in. Some people are okay if they're talking to friends. You figure that out yourself. But you got to be on top of it. So whatever that means for you, make sure the moment they walk in, boom, you put them in that zone where you want them to be at. So the transition, how they come from outside into your classroom. And then for me, I always have something for them to work on. And I would suggest that for you, some sort of warm up or something. So the transition, part of that transition, how they come in, just their energy coming in, and then what they do the moment they come into your classroom. Another thing you want to think about in your transitions, let's say it's actually during class now, right? Where they're going from one activity to another activity. I always want to have something for them to work on. I think it goes the idle hands or the devil's playground. I found that so true with 8th graders. If you have a moment, 2, 3, 4 minutes in the class where they're not working on something, or it's not scheduled break time, because you could have like hey, if we got 4 minutes to stretch, that's different, right? But 4 minutes in that transition period, if you don't have something for them to work on, oh man, craziness happens. And so I always recommend having something for them to work on. So for example, I have this one lesson that I do. I teach 8th grade history, and we teach about the different Bill of Rights, and we talk about the search warrant. And so my activity for the search warrant goes like this: that I give them part of the search warrant, and then they have to answer questions about it. And then I'll give them another part, and they have to answer questions, another part. So I chunk it up. So I don't give them the whole entire search warrant at once and tell them answer questions. I do one page at a time. But here's the flow of it. I always got to have something for them to work on. What I don't want to do is, all right, everybody, let's go over the first one. All right, good. All right, here we go now. Let me go ahead and pass out the second one to you, because then from the time I start passing out the second document to them, you got a minute or two where something could happen. So what will happen is, as they're working on the first one, I'll come by and pass out the second one. Now they can't start it yet because they don't have the information with it, but they have the document in their hands. That way, when the first one's over, boom, I can transition to the second document, and then the third and fourth. Always have something for them to work on. A third thing I recommend, and this is priceless for me, is a timer. If you're ever in my classroom, and you'll see on the walls a timer. And I actually got this from the idea from my wife. She did CrossFit for a while, and if you've ever been to a CrossFit gym, they have a timer going. You got so many sets you got to do in a time. And I fell in love with this timer, and so I have this timer in my classroom. And it's there for different reasons. One is because it kind of doesn't stress the kids out, but puts an emphasis on how much time they have. And so if I notice students off task, I kind of just point to the timer saying, we got 4 minutes left, let's go. Or hey, you just wasted 3 minutes, right? And so the timer kind of holds the kids more accountable. But also it's a signal, it's a cue that when the timer goes off, they're ready mentally for the next transition. And they know I'm going to go into the transition period. I'm going to transition to something else. So that timer is a verbal cue because they hear it. It's a visual cue because they see it. And we just condition them to know that's when we move into our next thing. The fourth thing is you got to find some way to bring the students back to you. What I mean by that is if they're working on an assignment, if they're working by themselves or together, whatever else it is, when that timer goes off or when that part is done, you want to transition into the next part of the activity. You got to bring the class back to you. And you can do this numerous ways. There's that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's a class, and they say yes, yes. The one I just use is everybody up here, please. Sounds real simple, right? Everybody up here, please. That's all I do. And I'll sit there, and wait till I get everybody's attention. There's another part of it I do as well, but that's my own cue. You got to develop your own cue. It could be any of those. It could be something else you come up with. But the bottom line is this. When you need the student to come back to you, you got to use that cue. It's a verbal, visual, however you want to do it. But the key is this, and this is the hardest part, especially for new teachers. This is the hardest part. You do not move on until you have all the students with you. Because if they're not all with you, if there's a little bit of chatter going in the background and you're trying to talk, that chatter is going to spread throughout the class and you're going to lose them. So my class, for example, we're working on an activity. That's how it looks. Let's say the search warrant activity, right? They're working on a search warrant activity. I put the timer up for 5 minutes. Boom, timer's up for 5 minutes. As they're working on that activity, I'll go around and pass out the second page of the activity as well as answering questions going around. All right, boom. 5 minutes up, timer goes off, ding. They hear the cue. They look up at me. And then I say, all right, everybody up here. And I wait until everybody's up there looking at me. And if they're not, then I call them out. Hey, John, back here, please, up here. And then when it's ready, then I can go on to the next one. All right, guys, we're going to page 2. Here we go. Here's what you need to do. So develop some sort of cue to draw the kids back to you. Here's another tip. I believe it's called I do, we do, you do. I'm not sure the exact verbiage of it. I just know I've been doing this for a while. I just never knew the formal name for it or how the academic name for it is now, what we teach. But the idea is this, that when they do an activity, I would first of all let's say it is answering questions. There's quotes from the Declaration of eighth grade history is what I teach. There's a quote from the Declaration of Independence. And so what I'll do is, all right, guys, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to read the quote. We're going to say what it means in our own interpretation of it. All right. And then we're going to talk why it's important. And then we'll draw an image of it. And so I'll do the first one together. So I'll put up there, I'll read it. All right, guys. Hey, does anybody, looking at this, here's how I interpret it as, and I'll tell them how I interpret it. And then I'll tell them why I think it's important, and then I'll draw a picture. And I said, go ahead and just copy that down. All right. And then what I'll do next is say, all right, guys, it's your turn now. I'll set the timer. Ding. I'll give you 5 minutes. I want you to read it, and I want you to kind of look at it a little bit, interpret it, and everything else. And let's do this as a class. And then we'll do it as a class, right? I'll take some suggestions and everything else, and there we go. First one I do, second one we do. And then the last one I say, all right, now here we go. For real, guys, here we go. This one you're going to do by yourself. And I have them work on it by themselves. So we basically got 2 examples. One is me doing all the way. Second one is the class kind of do the way, some class participation. And our third one is them doing it. And from there, they should be able to work on the activity by themselves. And at that point in time, I could chunk it 5, 10 minutes, whatever else, bring the class back again. That's up to you how to do that. But what's another name for that? I think they call this a gradual release. There's another terminology for it. But you get the idea. From experience, I would recommend doing this. If you're going to do groups, give the directions first. Oh, I'm not sure if you tried this before, but it's all right, guys. We're going to work on this activity. We're going to be working in groups. And as soon as you say that, all the attention goes away from you, and they start looking across the room and start talking to each other. Be my group. Oh, you're my group. And you haven't even given the directions yet, and you lost the class, right? And so don't do that. What you want to do, if you know they're going to be in groups, don't tell them yet. Don't tell them yet. What you want to do is you want to go through the directions first. So this is how I do it. I've said, all right, guys, I'm going to do the first one for you. Boom, I got the first one for you. And then, all right, let's do this one together, the second example together. And now the third one, you're going to work on your own. Oh, you know what? Actually, let's go ahead and do groups. I'll give you 1 minute to get into your groups. But see, they've already, first of all, they got the directions. They've seen how you do it. You guys did it as a class. Now they're able to go in groups. But if you were to say, all right, guys, we're going to do this one in groups today, boom, you lose them. And it's hard to pull them back in. It's hard for them to follow directions because they're so excited about the groups. So if it comes to groups, don't let them know until you first go through the directions, until you do it, they do it, or you, as a class, you guys do a class, and then tell them groups and they can work on it. Another thing about groups, if you're going to be doing groups a lot in your class, train it. Train the group work. And there's different strategies to this. First of all, how are they going to get in groups? If you're going to do this a lot, have a system, a plan put in place. My favorite teacher that I've watched, and I'm still amazed to this day how she does it. She has groups in pairs, and so she's, they're all facing forward, but they're in pairs. And then she's, all right, guys, let's get in groups. and she has it trained within a minute. And this is incredible. 8th graders, actually teaches 7th grade. 7th graders, within a minute, the 2 chairs facing the front here will turn around, and next thing you know, these pairs come together, and they're now a group of 4. But she trained them, and they can do it under a minute. And she'll set a timer, boom, timer goes off, boom, they're quiet, they're looking at her. It is amazing what she does. But she had to train them to do that. So however your groups are going to be, train them. If you're going to do a lot of group work, once again, you have different things, such as you have the leader presenter, the scribe, the messenger, however you want to do it. There's different ways to it. But just create something and teach that to your students and train your students, so that way, once you put the work in, you're good to go. The next transition I would talk about is end of class transition. How the student's going to leave your class and go out there. Now, if you're like me, sometimes you're like, I don't really care, I just want to get rid of them, right? But you want to make it a smooth transition. And so, for example, here are a couple ones that I have. If we're doing notes on a day, I know exactly how, I'm very cognitive of this, I know exactly how long it'll take them to write a summary, count their points, and turn in notes. And the answer is 8 minutes. 8 minutes before the bell rings, all right guys, all right, go ahead and write your summary. They write their summary. 5 minutes go by. Got 3 minutes left. All right guys, go ahead and count your points. Then it takes 2 minutes. Then we got 1 minute left. And that's, all right guys, go ahead and pack it up, and on the way out, put your work in the bin. I have that routine down, right? End of the class routine. If we're working on Chromebooks, I know it takes my class exactly 3 minutes to return the Chromebooks. 3 minutes before the bell rings, say, all right, go put your Chromebooks away. Takes them 2 minutes to return the Chromebooks and 1 minute to pack up. All right? And so we do that routine in the class. If it's another activity, same thing. And so the idea is this: your end of class, exhausted as you may be, as much as you want to get rid of those kids, develop some sort of thing for end of the class transitions. And the last bit of advice I want to give you is this: all these transitions, these procedures, practice them. Practice them. You're probably not going to believe me when I say this, but it's so true. I spend the first 2 weeks of my class practicing these things. Practicing it. All right, one way or the other. We'll do an assignment, but we'll go through it. And I'll say, all right, guys, this is how we're going to do this. Now, this is how we're going to count the points. And we'll go over how to count the points. And then we'll do it the next day. Chromebooks. Oh, for Pete's sakes, Chromebooks. I'll literally do this. I'll say, all right, guys, we're going to practice again our Chromebooks. And we go through your Chromebooks, and we all get them. They go back to their seat. I said, don't let me log on. And then we put it away, and they go back to their seat. All right, let's try this again. We just practice, get in our Chromebooks and put them back. Please, I know sometimes it's hard because you got so much stuff going on as teachers, and you got all these things you got to cover, but this pays dividends. This pays off so much in the long run. If you take the time to really practice these routines and these procedures, you're going to find your life so much easier as the school year goes on. Thank you for watching the video. If you like what you saw, please hit the subscribe button or click on one of the other links.